Fires in the Mirror, Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and Other Identities by Anna DeVere Smith. Background information of the Crown Heights conflict. On August 19, 1991, in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn, New York, one of the cars in a three-car procession carrying the Lubavitcher Hasidic Rebbe, spiritual leader, ran a red light, hit another car, and swerved onto the sidewalk. The car struck and killed Gavin Cato, a 7-year-old black boy from Guyana, and seriously injured his cousin, Angela. As rumors spread that a Hasidic-run ambulance service helped the driver and his passengers while the children lay bleeding, members of the district's black community reacted with violence against the police and the Lubavitchers. That evening, a group of young black men fatally stabbed Yankel Rosenbaum, a 29-year-old Hasidic scholar from Australia. For 3 days, black people fought police, attacked Lubavitcher headquarters, and torched businesses, while Hasidic patrols responded with their own violence. The conflict reflected long-standing tensions within Crown Heights between Lubavitchers and blacks, as well as the pain, oppression, and discrimination these groups have historically experienced outside their own communities. Members of the Crown Heights black community, many of them Caribbean immigrants without U.S. citizenship from Jamaica, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Haiti, and other countries, face discrimination both on the basis of their color and their national origin. And the Lubavitchers, members of an Orthodox Jewish sect that fled the Nazi genocide of Jews in Europe during World War II, are particularly vulnerable to anti-Jewish stereotyping because of their religious style of dress and insular community. Many blacks and others have said that white racism plays a critical role in Crown Heights. Black leaders have charged that the Lubavitchers have enjoyed preferential treatment in the community from police and other city agencies, including permission to close off major city streets during Jewish holidays. Blacks also report that some Lubavitchers have threatened and harassed them when buying area buildings for the expanding Lubavitcher community. Hasidic crime patrols, blacks say, have indiscriminately targeted members of the black community. According to Jews and others, black anti-Semitism has also played a significant role in the conflict. In addition to reporting that they are the frequent victims of black street crime, Lubavitchers point to the August fighting that included calls to kill the Jews, get the Jews out, and chants of Hail Hitler. Other statements during the conflict by some black spokespeople about Hasidic diamond merchants and Jews as the devil leaders of white people evoked old stereotypes of a sinister conspiracy by rich Jews controlling things behind the scenes. Many young blacks who took to the streets in August 1991 were less interested in targeting Jews than in fighting the police, who many in New York City's black community regard as an occupying army. During the conflict, police beat up black reporters and arrested between 150 and 300 young blacks as a preventative measure, in what witnesses described as indiscriminate sweeps. Many of those arrested were held for days without any word to their families. Like the black community, the Lubavitchers have also felt victimized during the conflict by the legal system and view the jury acquittal of Yankel Rosenbaum's accused murderer as the most stark example of this mistreatment. Media coverage of the Crown Heights conflict has intensified misunderstanding and hatred. Black media reports generally presented the conflict as an anti-racist struggle and dismissed or trivialized charges of anti-Semitism. Jewish newspapers often blamed black agitators and spoke of pogroms, organized massacres of Jews. The mainstream media, criticized by both blacks and Lubavitchers, tended to focus on whites as victims and blacks as victimizers. This kind of media polarization has made it extremely difficult for people to develop an understanding of the Crown Heights situation that acknowledges the experiences of all people involved. Ntozake Shange, The Desert, done by C.S. Fergusson-Vaux.
Identity. It is, in a way, it's sort of a psychic sense of place. It's a way of knowing that I'm not a rock or that tree. I'm this other living creature over here. It's a way of knowing that no matter where I put myself, that I am not necessarily what is around me. I'm a part of my surroundings, and I become separate from them. And it's being able to make those differentiations clearly that let us have an identity. And what's inside our identity is everything that's ever happened to us. Everything that's ever happened to us, as well as our responses to it. Because we might be alone in a trance state, someplace like the desert. And we begin to feel as though we are a part of the desert, which we are right at that minute, but we are not the desert. We are part of the desert, and when we go home, we take with us that part of the desert that the desert gave us. But we're still not the desert. It's important, an important differentiation to make, because you don't know what you're giving if you don't know what you have. And you don't know what you're taking if you don't know what's yours and what's somebody else's.
Anonymous Lubavitcher Woman, Static, read by Deborah Solomon.
Wow. It was getting towards the end of Shabbos, like around 5 in the afternoon, and it was summertime, and sunset isn't until about 8, 9 o'clock. So there were still quite a few hours left to go, and my baby had been playing with the knobs on the stereo system. Then, all of a sudden, he pushed the button, the on button, and all of a sudden, come blaring out full volume, sort of like a half station of polka music. But just like with the static, it was blaring. We can't turn it off. We can't turn off electrical. You know, electricity on Shabbos? So there was, we were just trying to ignore it. But a young boy that was visiting us, he was going nuts already, he said. It was giving him a headache. Could we do something about it? Couldn't we get a baby to turn it off? We can't make the baby turn it off, but if a child under 3 turns something on or turns something off, it's not considered against the Torah. So we put the baby by it and tried to get the baby to turn it off. He just he probably makes it worse. So the guest was so uncomfortable that I said I would go outside and see if I can find someone who's not Jewish and see if they would like to, if they could turn it off. So you can have somebody who's not Jewish do simple acts like turning on the light or turning off the light. And I hope I have the law correct, but you can't ask them to do it directly. But if they want to do it of their own free will, and hopefully they would get some benefit from it too. So I went outside and I saw a little boy in the neighborhood who I didn't know and didn't know me, not Jewish. He was black and he wasn't wearing a yarmulke because you can't. So I went up to him and I said to him that my radio is on really loud and I can't turn it off. And could he help me? So he looked at me a little crazy, like, well, and I said, I don't know what to do. So he said, okay. He followed me into the house and he hears this music on so loud and so unpleasant. And so he goes over to the stereo and he says, you see this little button here that says on and off? Push that in and that turns it off. And I just sort of stood there looking kind of dumb. And then he went and pushed it. We laughed. He probably thought, people say Jewish people are really smart and they don't know how to turn off their radios.
George C. Wolfe, 101 Dalmatians. I mean, I grew up on a one-block street that was black. My grandmother lived on that street. My cousins lived around the corner. I went to this black, private black grade school where I was extraordinary. Everybody there was extraordinary. You were told you were extraordinary. It was very clear that I could not go to see 101 Dalmatians at the Capitol Theater because it was segregated. And at the same time, I was treated like I was the most extraordinary creature that had been born. So I'm on my street in my house, at my school, and I was very spoiled too. So I was treated like I was this special creature. And then I would go beyond a certain point. I was treated like I was insignificant. Nobody was hosing me down or calling me nigger. It was just that I was insignificant. You know what I mean? So it was very clear of where my extraordinariness lived. You know what I mean? That I was extraordinary as long as I was black, but I am not going to place myself in relationship to your whiteness. I will talk about your whiteness if we want to talk about that. What am I saying? My blackness does not exist in relationship to your whiteness. You know, it does not exist in relationship to... It exists. It exists. I come. You know what I mean. Like I said, I come from... It's a very complex, confused, neurotic, at times destructive reality, but it is completely and totally a reality a reality contained and full unto itself. It's complex. It's demonic. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. It's evolved. It's all the stuff. That's the way I grew up. So that therefore, and then you're white. And then there's a point when, and then these two things come into contact. Aaron M. Bernstein, Mirrors and Distortions.
Okay. So a mirror is something that reflects light. It's the simplest instrument to understand, okay? So a simple mirror is just a flat, reflecting substance. Like, for example, it's a piece of glass which is silvered on the back, okay? Now, the notion of distortion also goes back into literature, okay? I'm trying to remember from art. You probably know better than I. You know, you have a pretty young woman and she looks in a mirror and she's a witch because she's evil on the inside. That's not a real mirror. As everyone knows, where you see the inner thing. Now that really goes back to literature. So everyone understood that mirrors don't distort. So that was a play, not on words, but on a concept. But physicists do talk about distortion. It's a big subject, distortions. I'll give you an example. If you want to see the stars, you make a big reflecting mirror. That's one of the ways. You make a big telescope so you can gather in a lot of light, and then it focuses at a point. And then there's always this something called the circle of confusion. So if you don't make the thing perfectly spherical or perfectly parabolic, then if there are errors in the construction, which you can see, it's easy. If it's huge, then you're going to have a circle of confusion, you see? So that's the reason for making the telescope as large as you can, because you want that circle to seem smaller, and you want to easily see errors in the construction. So you see, in physics, it's very practical. If you want to look up in the heavens and see the stars as well as you can without distortion. If you're counting stars, for example, and two look like one, you've blown it.
Anonymous Girl, Look in the Mirror, read by Leslie Barnett.
When I look in the mirror, I don't know. How did I find out I was Black? When I grew up and I look in the mirror and I saw I was Black. When I look at my parents, that's how I knew I was Black. Look at my skin. You Black? Black is beautiful. I don't know. That's what I always say. I think white is beautiful too. In my class, nobody is white. Everybody's Black. And some of them is Hispanic in my class. You can't call any of them Puerto Ricans, though. They despise Puerto Ricans. I don't know why. They think that Puerto Ricans are stuck up and everything. Well, they say, oh my gosh, my nail broke. Look at that cute guy and everything. but they act like that themselves. They act just like the white girls. Black girls is not like that. Please, you should be in my class. Like they say that Puerto Ricans act like that and they don't see that they act like that themselves. Black girls, they do bite off the Spanish girls. They bite off your clothes. You don't know what that means? Biting off? Like biting off somebody's clothes, like cop following. And last year, they used to have a lot of girls like that. They come to school with a style, right? And if they see another girl with that style, oh my gosh, look at her. What she thinks she is? She trying to bite off me in some way? So don't be biting off my sneakers or something like that, or doing a hairstyle. I mean, Black people are into hairstyles. So they come to school, see somebody with a certain style. They say, I'm going to get me one just like that. And that's the way Black people are. Yeah, okay. They don't like people doing that to them. And they do that to other people. Or the Black girls will follow the Spanish girls. The Spanish girls don't bite off of us. Some of the Black girls follow them. But they don't mind. They don't care. They follow each other. Like these 3 girls in my class, they're from the Dominican Republic. They all stick together like glue. They all 3 best friends. They don't follow nobody. Like there's none of them lead or anything. They don't hang around us either. They're by themselves.
The Reverend Al Sharpton, Me and James's Thing. Done by Emmanuel Catalan.
James Brown raised me. I never had a father. My father left when I was 10. And James Brown took me to the beauty parlor one day and made my hair like this. And made me promise to wear it like that till I die. It's a personal family thing between me and James Brown. I always wanted a father, and he filled that void. And the strength that he's demonstrated, I don't know anybody that reached his heights and then had to go as low as he did and come back. And I think that if anybody I met in my life deserved that type of tribute from somebody, that he wanted a kid to look like him and be like his son, I just came home from spending the weekend with him now. I think James deserved that. And just like he was the father I never had, his kids never even visited him when he went to jail. So I was like the kid he never had. And if I had to choose between arguing with people about my hairstyle or giving him that one tribute he asked, I'd rather give him that tribute because he filled the void for me. And I really don't give a damn who doesn't understand that. Oh, I know not you. Not you. The press and everybody do their thing on that. It's a personal thing between me and James Brown. And just like in other communities, people do their cultural thing with who they want to look like. There's nothing wrong with me doing that with James. It's us. I mean, in the 50s, it was a slick. It was acting like white folks. But today, people don't wear their hat like that. James and I are the only ones out there doing that. So it's certainly not a reaction to whites. It's me and James's thing.
Rivkah, Siegal, Wigs.
your hair, it only has to be, there's different customs in different Hasidic groups. Lubavitch, the system is it should be about 2 inches long. It's, some groups have the custom to shave their heads. The reason is when you go to the mikvah bath, you maybe it's better if it's short because of the preparation that's involved, and that you have to go under the water. The hair has a tendency to float, and you have to be completely submerged, including your hair. So, and I got married, and when I was a little older, and I really wanted to be married, and I really wanted to, in some ways, I was eager to cover my head. Now, if I had grown up in a Lubavitch household and then had to cut it, I don't know what that would be like. I really don't. But now that I'm wearing a wig, you see, with my hair, I can keep it very simple, and I can change it all the time. So with a wig, you have to have like 5 wigs if you want to do that. But I feel somehow it's fake, and I feel like it's not me. And I try to be as much myself as I can, and it just bothers me that I'm kind of fooling the world. I used to go to work, people, and I would wear a different wig, and they'd say, I like your new haircut. And I'd say, it's not mine, you know? And it was very hard for me to say, and it became very difficult. I mean, I've gone through a lot with wearing wigs and not wearing wigs, and it's been a big issue for me.
Angela Davis. Rope.
Of course, for many years in African American history, race was synonymous with community. As a matter of fact, many of our predecessors considered themselves race women and race men. Billie Holiday, for example, called herself a race woman, indicating that she was opposed to racism and supported the Black community. As a child growing up in the South, my own assumption was that if anybody in the community came under attack, then it was my responsibility to be there to support the person, to support the race. I was saying to my students just the other day that if it's 1970 when I was in jail, someone had told me that in 1991, a Black man who said that. One of his heroes was Malcolm X, would be nominated to the Supreme Court. I would have celebrated. I don't think it would have been possible at that time to convince me that I would be absolutely opposed to a Black candidate. And if someone had told me that a woman would finally be elected to the Supreme Court, it would have been very difficult, as critical as I am with respect to feminism, to imagine opposing her. I don't think it would have been possible to convince me that things would have so absolutely shifted that someone could have evoked the specter of lynching on national television in a way that would violate our history. Yet I feel that. Oh, we have to point out the race involved in the staging of the sexual harassment story with a Black woman and a Black man as the actors. I mean, Kennedy was right there, and it never occurred to anyone to bring him up on charges for his past indiscretions. Actually, we, in our various oppressed and marginalized communities, have been able to turn terrible acts of racism directed against us into victories. And I think Anita Hill achieved a victory by showing the courage to expose the sexual harassment issue on a national level. This is a very, very complicated situation, but I have no problems aligning myself politically against Clarence Thomas. I am very passionate about that. But at the same time, we have to think about the racism that made the Thomas Hill hearings possible. So I think we need to develop new ways of looking at community. Race in the old sense has become an increasingly obsolete way of constructing community because it is based on immutable biological facts.
Monique Big Mo Matthews, Rhythm and Poetry. And she say, this is for the fellas. And she took off all her clothes and she had on a leotard that had all these cuts and stuff in it, and she started doing it on the floor. They were like, go girl. People like, that look really stink. But that's what a lot of female rappers do. Like, they try to get off, they sell their body or pimp their body to get play. And you have people like Latifah who doesn't, she talks intelligent. You have Light who's just hard and people are scared by her hardness, her strength of her words. She encompasses that whole New York street sound. It's like, she'll like, what's the line? Like paper thin in one ear and right out of the other. It's like, I don't care what you have to say. I'm getting done what's gotta be done. Man can't come across me. A female, she can't stand against me. I'm just the toughest. I'm just the hardest. You just can't come up against me. If you do, you get waxed. It's like a lot of my songs. I don't know if I'm gonna get blacklisted for it. The image that I want is a strong African, strong black woman. And I'm not down with what's going on. Like Big Daddy Kane had a song and called Pimpin' Ain't Easy. And he sat there and he talked for the whole song. And I sit there, I want to slap him. I want to slap him so hard. Oh. And he talks about, at one point he goes, yeah, Puerto Rican girls call me Poppy. And even white girls say I'm a hunk. I'm like, what you mean even? Oh, black girls ain't good enough for you, huh? And one of my songs has a line that's like, pimpin' ain't easy, but whoring ain't proper. Respect and cherish the original mother. And a couple of my friends were like, oh, Mo, you good, but I can't listen to you because you be man bashing. I say, it ain't men bashing, it's female asserting. Shit. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of my friends just accepting that they just considered to be a hoe. You got a song, everybody's a hottie. A hottie means you a freak, you a hoe. And it's like, Too Short gets up there and he goes, bye. Like he stretches, bitch, out for as long as possible. Like you just a hoe and you can't be saved. And To Live Crew, we want some pussy. And the girls, la 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 la. It's like my friends say, Mo, if you so bad, how come you don't never say nothing about To Live Crew? When I talk about rap and I talk about people demeaning rap, I don't even mention them because they don't understand the fundamentals of rap. Rap is basically broken down rhythm and poetry is expression. It's just like poetry. You release so much through poetry, you get angry. You get it? Poetry is like intelligence. You just release it all. And you don't have a complex rhyme. It's like, I'm going to the store. What rhymes with store? More store for more bored. I'm going to the store. I hope I don't get bored. It's like, what you saying, man? Who cares? You have to have something that flows. You have to be deaf. D-E-F. I guess I have to think of something for you that ain't slag. Deaf is dope. Deaf is live. When you say something's dope, It means it is the epitome of the experience, and you have to be deaf by your very presence because you have to make people happy. And we are living in a society where people are not happy with their everyday lives. Leonard Jeffries, Roots.
People are asking, who is this guy, Jeffries? When they find out my background, they're going to be surprised. They're going to find out I was even related to Alex Haley. In fact, I was a major consultant for Roots. In fact, there might not have been a Roots without me. Now, when I say that, that's my own personal joke with Alex. He was in Philadelphia, getting his ticket to go down to Jamaica. And Roots was lost. He had it in a duffel bag, a big duffel bag like this, the whole manuscript, and it was lost in the airport of Philadelphia. I got on my own horse and ran around the airport of Philadelphia and found Roots. So that's my joke. He had this manuscript. Alex didn't have anything else but this manuscript. Now, if he had lost that, that would have been it. He didn't have any photocopies. Alex did everything on a shoestring. So for him to deny me now, he never even acknowledged. Pat, Alexander, his girlfriend's secretary, who he paid with affection and not with resources. So I didn't expect him to acknowledge me. He called me to come down. I called my wife, who was working on her PhD at Yale, and I said, Rosalind, Alex wants us to come down to Brunswick, Georgia. They're filming Roots. She said yes. She'd come down and we'd go. Then she called me back and said, I got too much work. So I went down to Brunswick, Georgia. He introduced me to Margulies, who was the director of Roots. As the leading expert in America on Africa, I said, wow, to myself, that's kind of high. When Margulies said, that makes me number 2, then I realized what Alex was doing to keep Roots honest. So for 2 weeks, I tried to change Roots. Alex would say, wait a minute, let's consult the experts. After 2 weeks, they got tired of me, sat me down and said, Dr. Jeffries, at lunch, we're very happy to have you here, but we just bought the rights to the book Roots, and we are under no obligation to maintain the integrity of the book, and we certainly don't have to deal with the truth of Black history. Now that was a wipeout for me. There's been very few traumatic moments just to think. Now I wasn't even prepared for this, but Pat had called me before and said, Len, I'm looking at this document and I don't know what to make of it. And I said, what is it, Pat? What is it? And I knew she was nervous. She said, I'm reading a contract that says Roots has been sold to David Wolfe and their heirs forever and ever. And their heirs forever and Alex, had signed the contract for $50,000. $50,000 for our paperback Roots. Something that made how much? $300 million? He was suing them for years. The millions he made on TV Roots, he spent a lot of it to sue Doubleday to get a better deal. I don't know if he ever got it. Roots was a devastation. Tens of millions and hundreds of millions made on Roots went to produce, not to make more black series like Roots. They went to produce a series, maybe a dozen mini-series on Jewish history as opposed to black history. You can document what was produced in terms of black history compared to what was produced on Jewish history. It's a devastation. But the one thing that came out of this for me was that when these people told me, we bought your research, we bought your history, you really have no... I was thrown off. I had to get out of there. I stayed for another couple of days. I told Alex I had to make a pilgrimage to my grandfather's grave. Never saw my grandfather. Then I watched one more scene in the Alex Haley thing, and that finished it for me. A cutaway of a slave ship that was so real that they had to bring in these high school kids. And once these high school kids played the enslaved Africans greased down in simulated vomit and feces, they couldn't come back. So they had to continue to go take these youngsters, and some little white woman who was there sleeping with one of those guys, they told her, you cannot take these kids without authorization. But she would drive a bus up to the schoolyard, put the kids in it, and bring them to the set. And it almost produced a riot there. But anyway, this slave scene was so realistic. The trailer's up on a deck, and Kunta Kinte's on a bottom deck, and they call down to each other, and the trainer says, Kunta Kinte, be strong, we may have to fight. Kill the white man and return to Mother Africa. This was high drama. All of us grown men over hiding in the shadows in tears. Then Green rushes out and says, break. He said he didn't want the scene. We said, what? Even Lou Gossett and them were ready to fight. Because they had a movie script is just a skeleton, right? You have to put your soul into a movie script. And they put their heart and soul into what would have been. And with the African, because the earth is mother all over Africa. So to go back to Mother Africa is a very meaningful phrase. But this Englishman refused to accept it, and they almost had a physical fight on set. They compromised and said, we're all from one village, which is not the same thing. After that, I said, I had to go. I have to go. And I rented I flew out with Lorne Green, of all people. He saw me, and we had known each other for a couple of weeks from the set, and he's sitting there drinking his little drinks, talking about, isn't Roots wonderful? It's everybody's history, and I am dying. Get to Atlanta, rent a car, cut across the Georgia countryside, come to a fork in the road, made the right turn, and there on a bluff was a clapboard church made by my grandfather and 4 other trustees. Then when I went across the cemetery to see the gravesite where he was the tallest tombstone in the graveyard was his. It was an obelisk. On it was a Masonic symbol. He was the master of the lodge. On it was his vital statistics. Born August the 10th, 1868. At the birth of the 14th Amendment. I learned Later, that his brother Sam was born 1865 at the birth of the 13th Amendment. And this is why people say, who is he? What is he? Why is he? If they only knew. I've had one of the best educations on the planet. Now, so when I went to Albany in July, I went knowing that you might not have much time. Just like my wife said on the radio today, when we speak as though it is the last speech we're gonna make. Because I knew what was at stake. Ever since they branded me a conspiracy theorist. February 12th, 1990, 2-column editorial in the New York Times that was in the concept of Jewish thinking. The kiss of death. I knew I'd been targeted. Arthur Schlangenstein went and wrote a book called The Disuniting of America. He has everybody in the margin except a half-page photo of myself, which said to us, this is the one they got to kill. Who we knew that Schlangenstein had his people sent out 1,000 letters to CEOs around the country and foundation heads, not to have anything to do with all of us involved in these studies for multicultural curriculum. So, knowing that I had taken this beating for 2.5 years, it was my chance to strike out. But people don't understand that this was my way of saying, you bastards, for starting this process of destroying me. That was my way of striking out. But people don't know the context. They don't know that for 2.5 years, I bore this burden by myself. And I bore it well. And now they got a problem. Because after they destroyed me, here he is, resurrected. I spoke at Columbia. I spoke at Queens College.
Letty Cottin Pogrebin, near enough to reach.
I think it's about rank frustration and the old story that you pick a scapegoat. That's much more, Jews and Blacks, that's manageable because we're near. We're still near enough to each other to reach. What can you do about the people who voted for David Duke? Yeah, are Blacks going to go there and deal with that? No, it's much easier to deal with Jews who are also panicky. We're the only ones that pay any attention. You hear? Well, Jeffries did speak about the mafia being mafia and the Jews in Hollywood. I didn't see this tremendous outpouring of Italian reaction. I didn't see. Only Jews listen. Only Jews take Blacks seriously. Only Jews view Blacks as full human beings that you should address in their rage. And people don't seem to notice that. But Blacks, it's like a little child kicking up against Arnold Schwarzenegger. When they have anything to say about the dominant culture, nobody listens, nobody reacts. To get a headline, to get on the evening news, you have to attack a Jew. Otherwise, you're ignored. And it's a shame. We all play into it.
Minister Conrad Mohammed, 7 verses.
The condition of the Black man in America today is part and parcel through the devilishment that permitted Caucasian people to rob us of our humanity and put us in the throes of slavery. The fact that our Black parents were actually taken as cattle and as as animals and packed into slave ships like sardines amid feces and urine. And the suffering of our people for months in the matter of passage, our women raped before our own eyes, so that today someone looked like you, someone looked like me, someone looked like brother. This is a crime of tremendous proportion. In fact, no crime in the history of humanity has before or since equaled that crime. The Holocaust did not equal it. Oh, absolutely not. First of all, that was a horrible crime. And that is something that is a disgrace in the eyes of civilized people. That crime also stinks in the nostrils of God. But it in no way compares with the slavery of our people, because we lost over 100 and some say 250 million in the Middle Passage coming from Africa to America. We were so thoroughly robbed. We didn't just lose 6 million. We didn't just endure for this for 5 or 6 years, or from 38 to 45 or 39 to something. We endured this for over 300 years. The total subjugation of the Black man. You can go into Bangladesh today, Calcutta, New Delhi, Nigeria, some really so-called underdeveloped nation. And I don't care how low that person's humanity is, whether they never had running water, if they've never seen a television or anything, they're in a better condition than the Black man and woman in America today, right now. Even at heart, they have a contextual understanding of what identity is. But the Black man has no knowledge of that. He's an amnesia victim. He has lost knowledge of himself. And he's living a beast life. So this proves that it was the greatest crime, because we were cut off from our past. Not only were we killed and murdered, not only were our women raped in front of their own children, not only did the slave master stick at times daggers into a pregnant woman's stomach, slice the stomach open, push the baby out on the ground, and crush the head of the baby to instill fear in the masses of the plantation. Not only were these things done, not only were our thumbs put in devices that would just slowly torture the slave and tear the thumb off from the root. Not only were we sold on the auction block like cattle, not permitted to marry. See, these are the crimes of slavery that nobody wants to talk about. But the most significant crime, because we could have recovered from all of it, but the fact that they cut off all knowledge from us, told us that we were arrogant, told us that we were subhuman, took from us our names, gave us names like Smith and Jones. And today we wear those names with dignity and pride. Yet, these were the names given to us in one of the greatest crimes ever committed on the face of the earth. So this kind of thing, sister, is what qualifies slavery as the greatest crime ever committed. They have stolen our garment, stolen our identity. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan teaches us that we are the chosen of God. We are those people that Almighty God Allah has selected as his chosen. And they are masquerading in our garments, the Jews. We don't have an identity today because we are the people There are 7 verses in the Bible. 7 verses. I believe it is in Deuteronomy that the Jews base their chosen people, claim the theology, the whole theological exegesis with respect of being the chosen is based upon 7 verses in the scripture that talk about a covenant with Abraham.
Letty, Cottin, Pogrebin, Isaac. Read by Nicole Godino.
Well, it's hard for me to do that because I think there's a tendency to make hay with the Holocaust, to push all the buttons. And I mean, this story about my uncle Isaac makes me cry, and it's going to make your audience cry. And I'm beginning to worry that we're trotting out our Holocaust stories too regularly, and that we're going to inure each other to the truth of them. But I think, well, maybe if you let me read it, I would prefer to read it. I remember my mother's cousin, Isaac, who came to New York immediately after the war and lived with us for several months. Isaac is my connection to dozens of other family members who were murdered in their concentration camps. Because he was blonde and blue-eyed, he had been chosen as the designated survivor of his town. That is, the Jewish councils had instructed him to do anything to stay alive and tell the story. For Isaac, anything turned out to mean this. The Germans suspected his forged Aryan papers and decided that he would have to prove by his actions that he was not a Jew. They put him on a transport train with the Jews of his town and then gave him the task of herding them into the gas chambers, everyone in his trainload. After he had fulfilled that assignment with patriotic German efficiency, the Nazis accepted the authenticity of his identity papers and let him go. Among those whom Isaac packed into the gas chambers that day, dispassionately, as if shoving a few more items into an overstuffed closet, were his wife and 2 children. The designated survivor arrived in America at about age 40, with prematurely white hair and a dead gaze within the sky blue eyes that had helped him save his life. As promised, he told his story to dozens of Jewish agencies and community leaders and to groups of families and friends, which is how I heard the account translated from his Yiddish by my mother. For months he talked, speaking the unspeakable, describing a horror that American Jews had suspected but could not conceive. A monstrous tale that dwarfed the demonology of legend and gave me the nightmare I still dream to this day. And as he talked, Isaac seemed to grow older and older until one night, a few months later, when he finished telling everything he knew, he died.
Robert Sherman, Lousy Language. Read by Leslie Barnett.
Do you have demographic information on Crown Heights? The important thing to remember is that And I will check these numbers when I get back to the office. I think the Hasidism compromised only 10% of the population of the neighborhood. The Crown Heights conflict has been brewing on and off for 20 years since the Hasidic community developed some serious numbers and some strength in Crown Heights. And as African Americans and Caribbean Americans came to make up the dominant culture in Crown Heights. Oh, you're very important to remember that those things that are expressed really as bias, those things that we at the Human Rights Commission would consider to be bias, which is complaints based on a characteristic, not on the knowledge of a specific person. There sort of is a soup of bias, prejudice, racism, and discrimination. I think bias really does relate to feelings with a valence, feelings with a feelings that can go in a direction positive or negative, although we usually use bias to mean a negative. What it means usually is negative attitudes that can lead to negative behaviors, biased acts, biased incidents, or biased crimes. Racism is hatred based on race. Discrimination refers to acts against somebody so that the words actually tangle up. I think in part because vocabulary follows general awareness. Well, I think you know the Eskimos have 17 words for snow. We probably have 17 different kinds of bias, prejudice, racism, and discrimination. But it's not in our mindset to be clear about it. So I think that we have sort of lousy language on the subject, and that is a reflection of our unwillingness to deal with it honestly and to sort it out. I think we have very, very bad language.
Rabbi Joseph Spielman, No Blood in His Feet.
Many people were on the sidewalk, talking, playing, drinking, beer, or whatever, being that type of neighborhood. A car, driven by an individual, a Hasidic individual, went through the intersection, was hit by another car, thereby causing it to go onto the sidewalk. The driver, on seeing himself in such a position that he felt he was definitely going to hit someone, because of the amount of people on the sidewalk, he steered at the building so as to get out of the way of the people. And obviously, for the most part, he was successful. But regrettably, one child was killed and another child was wounded. Seeing what happened, he jumped out of the car and realizing there may be a child under the car, he tried to physically lift the car from the child. Well, as he was doing this, the Afro-Americans were beating him already. He was beaten so much he needed stitches in the scalp, in the face, 15 or 16 stitches. And also there were 3 other passengers in the car that were being beaten too. One of the passengers was calling 911 on the cellular phone. A black person pulled the phone out of his hands and ran, just stole the telephone. The Jewish community has a volunteer ambulance corps, which is funded totally from the nations. There is not one penny of government funds, and manned by volunteers who many times at their expense supplied the equipment that they carry in order to save lives. As one of the EMS ambulances was coming, one of the Hasidic or ambulances or the Jewish ambulance came on the scene. The EMS responded with 3 ambulances on the scene. They were there before the Jewish ambulance came. 2 or 3 police cars were already on the scene. The police saw the potential for violence and saw that the occupants of the car were being beaten, were afraid for their safety. At the same time, the EMS asked the Hasidic ambulances for certain pieces of equipment that they were out of, that they needed to take care of this Cato kid. And in fact, the Hasidic ambulance left, leaving behind one of the passengers. That passenger had a walkie-talkie, and he requested that I come down to pick him up. And at that time, there was a lot of screaming and shouting. It was a mixed crowd, Hasidic and Afro-American. The police said, "Rabbi, get your people out of here." I told them to leave, and I left. Now, a few hours later, 2.5 hours later, in a different part of Crown Heights, a scholar from Australia, Yankel Rosenbaum, who I think he had a doctorate or he was working on his doctorate, was walking down the street on his own. I mean, he was totally oblivious. And he was accosted by a group of young blacks, about 20 of them strong, which was being egged on by a black male approximately 40 years old and balding, telling them, "Kill all Jews. Look what they did to the kid. Kill all Jews." And all the epithets that go along with it, Heil Hitler and all of it. They stabbed him, which later on the stab wounds were fatal, and he passed away in the hospital. The mayor, hearing about the Cato kid, came to the Kings County Hospital to give condolences to the family of the child who had regrettably been killed. At the meantime, they had already wheeled in Mr. Rosenbaum. He was in the emergency room, and I was at the hospital at the time. And the mayor, seeing me there, expressed his concern that a child, an innocent child, had been killed. Where I explained to him the fact that whereas the child was killed from an unfortunate accident, there was no malicious intent. Here, there was an individual lying in the emergency room who had been stabbed with malicious intent. And for the sole reason, not that he did anything to anyone, just from the fact that he happened to be Jewish. And the mayor went with me to the emergency room to visit Mr. Rosenbaum. This was approximately 1.5 hours before he passed away. I noticed at the time that his feet were completely white. And I complained to the doctor on the scene, "He's having a problem with blood circulation because there's no blood in his feet." And she gave me some asinine answer, and the mayor asked her what his condition is. "Serious but not stable." In the meantime, he was screaming and in pain, and they weren't doing anything. Subsequently, they started giving him anesthesia in a time that they weren't allowed to give him anesthesia, and while he was under anesthesia, he passed away. So there was totally mismanagement in his case, whereas the mayor had been fed. His people got whatever information he got out of the black community was that the driver had run a red light, and also that the ambulance, the Hasidic ambulance, refused to take care of the black child that was dying and rather took care of their own. Eh? And this is what was fed among the black community. And it was false. It was totally false, and it was done maliciously, only with the intent to get the riots, to start up the resulting riots.
Mexican Standoff, C.S. Fergusson-Vaux.
You can't have that kind of accident if people are observing the speed limits. People knew it was the Grand Rebbe. People have seen the Grand Rebbe charging through the community. He is worried about a threat on his life from the Satmars. These Lubavitcher people are really very enigmatic people. They move so easily between simplicity and sophistication. because they fear for his life, because the Satmars, who are their sworn enemies, have threatened to kill the Rebbe. So whenever he comes out, he's got to be whisked. You know, like a president, or even better than a president. He says he's an international figure, like a pope. I say then, why don't you get the Swiss guards to escort you rather than using the police and taxpayers' money? He's got to be whisked. Quickly, through the neighborhood. Can't walk around. He used to walk when I first came here. Now he doesn't walk at all. They drive him. And when he walked, you could tell he was in front because he was protected all around. And they spilled out onto the streets, and buses had to stop because this big band had to escort the Rebbe from his house over there to the synagogue. So the Rebbe goes to the cemetery. Every time the Rebbe goes to the cemetery, which is once a week to visit his wife, his dead wife, and father-in-law, the police lead him in escort, charging down the street at 70 miles an hour in a metropolis. What do you want? It happened that on this occasion, that as they were coming back, the police car with its siren had gone over a main intersection with the light in favor of the police car. The Rebbe's Cadillac had passed when the lights became amber, and nobody expected the bodyguard van, the station wagon, to deliberately go through the red light. So the traffic that had the right of way kept coming, and bang! Came the collision, and the careening onto the sidewalk had to damage whoever was there, and then they were more concerned about licking their own wounds rather than pick the car off the boy, who died as a result. And then the ambulance that came, the Jewish ambulance, was concerned about the people in the van, while some boy lay dead. A black boy lay dead on the street. The people showed their anger. They burned and whatever else, upturned police cars and looted. And as a result, I think, in retaliation, murdered one of the Hasidics. But that was just the match that lit the powder keg. It's going to happen again and again. There's a Mexican standoff right now. But it's going to happen again.
Anonymous Young Man number 1. Wah, wah, wah. What I saw was she was pushing her brother on the bike like this, right? She was pushing him, and he kept dipping around like he didn't know how to ride the bike. So she kept running and pushing him to the side. So she was already running when the car was coming. So I don't know if she was running towards it, because we was watching the car weaving, and we was going, oh, yo, it's a Jew man. He broke the stoplight. They never get arrested. At first, we was laughing, man. We was like, you see, they do anything and get away with it. And then we saw that he was out of control. And then we started regretting laughing, because then we saw where he was going. First, he hit a car, right? He tore a whole front fender off a car. And then we was like, oh my God, man, look at the kids, you know? So we was already running over there. But by the time the accident happened, that's how we know he was drinking. Because he was like, wah, 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 wah. And I was like, yo, man, he's drunk. Grab him. Grab him. Don't let him go anywhere. I said, grab him. I didn't want him to limp off in some apartment somewhere and come back in a different black jacket. So I was like, grab him. And then I was like, is the ambulance coming for the kids? Because I've been in a lot of confrontations with Jews before, and I know that when they said an ambulance is coming, It's most likely meant for them. And they're like, oh, Jews, right? Ambulance coming, ambulance coming. Calm down, calm down. God will help them. God will help them if you believe. And we acted like he was dying. Wow, me too. I'm hurt too. Well, nothing wrong with him. Well, nothing wrong with him. They say that we beat up on that man, that he had to have stitches because of us. You don't come out of an accident like that unmarked without a scratch. The most he got from us was slapped by a little kid. And here come the ambulance. And I was like, that's not a city ambulance. Not like this. I was upset, right? And I was like, yo, the man is drunk. He ran a red light. Y'all ain't gonna do nothing. Everybody started coming around, right? Because I was talking about, these kids is dying, man. I'm talking about the skull of the baby is on the ground, man. And he's walking. I was like, don't let him get into that ambulance. And the Jews, we was like private ambulance. I was like, grab him. But my buddies was like, we can't touch him. Nobody wanted to grab him. Nobody wanted to touch him. And I was breaking full, man. I was going mad. I couldn't believe it. Everybody just stood there. And that made me cry. I was crying. So I left. I went home and watched the rest of it on TV. It was too lackadaisy. It was like me, man, instigated the whole thing. I got arrested for it. Long after in Queens. Can't tell you no more about that. You know, hey, wait a minute. They got eyes and ears everywhere. What color is the Israeli flag? And what color are the police cars? A man was drunk. I opened up his car door. I was like, he'd been drinking. I know our words don't have no meaning as black people in Crown Heights. You realize, man? Ain't no justice. Ain't never been no justice. Ain't never gonna be no justice. Michael S. Miller, Hail Hitler.
I was at Gavin Cato's funeral. At nearly every public event that was conducted by the Lubavitcher community and the Jewish community as a whole, words of comfort were offered to the family of Gavin Cato. I can show you the letter that we sent to the Cato family expressing our sorrow over the unnecessary loss of their son. I am not aware of a word that was spoken at that funeral. I am not aware of and I was taking notes, of a word that was uttered of comfort to the family of Yankel Rosenbaum. Frankly, this was a political rally rather than a funeral. The individuals you mentioned, and again, I'm not going to participate in verbal acrimony. Not only were there cries of, kill the Jews or kill the Jew, there were cries of Hail Hitler. There were cries of Hitler didn't finish the job. There were cries of throw them back in the ovens again. To hear in Crown Heights. And Hitler was no lover of blacks. Heil Hitler? Hitler didn't finish the job. We should heat up the oven. From blacks is more inexplicable or unexplainable or any other word that I cannot fathom. The hatred is so deep-seated, and the hatred knows no boundary to, there is no boundary to anti-Judaism. The anti-Judaism, if people don't want me to hear me use the word anti-Semitism. And I'll be damned if preferential treatment is going to be the excuse for every bottle, rock, or pellet that's directed towards a Jew, or the window of a Jewish home, or a Jewish store. And frankly, I think the response of the Lubavitcher community was relatively passive.
Henry Rice knew how to use certain words.
I went back home and got my bike because I knew I would have to be elusive. I was there in body and spirit, but I didn't participate in any of the violence because basically I had a lot to lose. But I was there, and I would have defended myself if it was necessary. Most definitely. I read the round trouble. When something broke out, I moved back. When it calmed down, I would move back in on the front line. I was always there. And Richard Green heard me say something to a bunch of kids about voting, about the power of votes, the power of numbers. And he said, I said, get away from me. You're an Uncle Tom. Get away from me. Get back in your Mercedes Benz. No. I said that to Clarence Norman and to Richard Green, both of them. I was tearing them apart. Richard Green was very persistent. He said, look, Mr. Rice, I like the way you speak. I need you. Please help me. I'm a community activist. Ba, 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 ba. It didn't get on me. I'm a community activist. I need your help. Please help me, and so forth. Again, I'm paying no mind, but we spoke some the next day after that. After the incidents that took place on that corner of Albany Avenue, my brother was beat up. Cops rushed into the black crowd, didn't rush into the Jewish crowd. Cops rushed into the black crowd, started beating up black people. But the next day, Richard came by in a yellow van, a New York City Department of Transportation van with a megaphone, yellow light flashing, the whole works. And he said, Henry, I need you in this van. Drive around with me. Let's keep some of these kids off the street tonight. I said, okay. He said, the blood of black men are on your hands tonight. I said, okay. We drive around in the van. Young people, stay in this house. Mother, keep your children in the house, please. So I began feeling like I had to do something after he told me that. The blood of the black man were on my hands, you know. Richard Green sure know how to use certain words. I remember reaching Albany Avenue. Kids were being chased by the police. I jump out with a portable megaphone. I tell them, stop running. The cops won't chase you and they won't hit you. The next thing I know, cops grab my megaphone, hits me in the head with a stick, handcuffs me, and takes the megaphone out of my hands. So I'm like, wait a minute. I'm doing a community service for the mayor's office. They don't want to hear it. Matter of fact, they still have the microphone till this day. I'm like, Richard Green, get me out of this police car, please. So a black captain came by. Thank God. And he says, what's going on? Richard Green explained to him. He said, let him go. Get back in the van. There's another brother in the van. And start saying non-violence to the young brothers. They began throwing bottles at the van. One guy got so upset, he had a 9mm fully loaded. He said, get the hell out of this neighborhood. I told Richard Green, take me home, shit. The next day, more violence, fires, cars being burnt, stores being broken into, a perception that black youth are going crazy in Crown Heights, like we were angry over nothing. Understand?
Norman Rosenbaum, My Brother's Blood.
Aldo lechi, so achi ale alo dalmo. My brother's blood cries out from the ground. Let me make it clear why I'm here. In August 1991, as you've all heard before today, my brother was killed in the streets of Crown Heights for no other reason than he was a Jew. The only miracle was that my brother was the only victim who paid for being a Jew with his life. When my brother was surrounded, each and every American was surrounded. When my brother was stabbed 4 times, each and every American was stabbed 4 times. And as my brother bled to death in this city, while the medicos stood by and let him bleed to death, it was the gravest of indictments against this country. 1 person out of 20 gutless individuals who attacked my brother has been arrested. I, for one, am not convinced that it is beyond the ability of the New York police to arrest the others. So let me tell you, Mayor Dinkins, and let me tell you, Commissioner Brown, I'm here, and I'm not going home until there's justice.
Norman Rosenbaum, 16 hours difference.
There's 16 hours difference between New York and Melbourne. And I had just gotten back to my office and I had a phone call from my wife and she said she wanted me to come home straight away. And I sensed the urgency in her voice. I said, "Are you all right?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Are the children all right? You know, the kids?" She says, "Yeah." So I'm driving home and I'm thinking, I wonder what's the problem now, you know? We had some carpenters doing some work. I wonder if there's been some sort of disaster, some sort of domestic problem. And I thought, oh my God, my parents, I didn't even ask after them. How insensitive not to even ask about my parents. And I've got a grandmother, 85 years old, same sort of thing. So I get home, I walk in the door, and a friend of mine was standing there. Close friend, does the same sort of work as me. He's a barrister and an academic. And he sees me and he says, we've got a problem. There's a problem. I thought he was talking about a case we were working on together. He says, "So come and sit down." He goes to me, "There's been a riot in New York. Been a riot in Crown Heights. Yankel's been stabbed and he's dead." And my brother was the last in the world. I hadn't even given him a thought. I mean, the fact that my brother could be attacked or die, it just hadn't even entered my mind. At first, I appeared all cool, calm, and collected. I then started asking questions, like, who told you? How do you know? Are you sure? I just asked the question, are you sure?
Anonymous young man number 2. Bad boy. That you, that 16-year-old didn't murder that Jew. For one thing, he played baseball, right? He was a athlete, right? A bad boy does bad things. Only a bad boy could have stabbed the man. Somebody who does those types of things or who sees those types of things. Athlete sees people, is interested in athletics, stretching, exercising, going to the football games or his baseball games. He's not interested in stabbing people. So it's not in his mind to stab, to just jump into something that he has no idea about and kill a man. A bad boy, somebody who's groomed in badness or did badness before, stabbed the man. Because I used to be an athlete, and I used to be a bad boy. And when I was an athlete, I was an athlete. All I thought about was athlete. I'm not going to jeopardize my athleticism or my career to do anything that bad people do. And when I became a bad boy, I'm not an athlete no more. I'm a bad boy. And I'm grooming myself in things that is bad. You understand? So, he's an athlete. He's not a bad boy. It's a big difference. Like, mostly, the black youth in Crown Heights have two things to do. Either DJ or be a bad boy, right? You either DJ, be an MC, a rapper, or Jamaican rapper, ragamuffin, or you be a bad boy. You sell drugs or you rob people. What you do? I sell drugs. What you do? I rap. That's how it is in Crown Heights. I've been living in Crown Heights most of my life. I know for a fact that youth, that 16-year-old, he didn't kill that Jew. That's between me and my creator. Sonny Carson, chords.
It's going to be a long, hot summer. I'm connected up with the young people all over the country, and there's a thread leading to an eruption. And Crown Heights began the whole thing. And the Jews come second to the police when it comes to feelings of dislike among Black folks. The police, believe me, the police, oh, I know the police and the police know me. And they turned that whole place into an occupied camp with the 71st precinct as the overseers. Don't think that everything is okay within that precinct amongst those officers either. Don't think that. Don't think that. You know the media has always painted me as the bad guy. That's okay. I'm a good guy to pick on. Their viewers don't like me either. They really don't like me because I am the bad guy. I am the ultimate bad guy because of my relationship to the young people in the city. I understand their language. I respect them as a future. I speak their language. They don't even engage in line dialogue anymore. Just short words. It always amazes me how the city fathers, the power brokers, just continue to deny what's happening. And it is just getting intolerable for me to continue to watch this small, arrogant group of people continue to get this kind of preferential treatment. They sit on a school board, a board of 9, and they have 4 members. And their kids don't even go to public school. So that's the kind of arrogance I'm talking about. I have no reason to be eagerly awaiting the coming together of our people. They owe me first. I'm not giving in just like that. I don't want it. You can have it. Like my grandmother said, help the bear. If you see me and the bear in a fight, help the bear. Don't help me. Help the bear. I don't need any of it from them. And I'm not going to advocate any coming together and healing of America and all that shit. You can? You can? Just because I can have the fortune of walking in here and sitting and talking and having a drink, it appeared that I have all the same kind of abilities of other folks in here. No, it's not that way. Because tonight, by nighttime, it can all change for me. So I'm always aware of that. And that's what keeps me going today and each day. See, I have this idea about a film. These kids, they got another kind of rhythm now. There's a whole new kind of stuff that they do. When I first heard rap, I was sitting in a huge open kind of stadium, boys and girls high school field. And I heard these kids come out and start rapping. And I'm listening, but it's not really clicking. But I was mesmerized though. But it was simultaneous all around the country. And I said, oh shit. And everybody I knew who was young was listening to it. And I said, wow. Because I always have been involved with young people. And all of a sudden, I got it. I really heard the rhythm, the chords, the discord. There's a whole new sound that the crackers are trying to get, but they can't get it. I heard it on a television commercial. One of the most beautiful pieces of art that I ever witnessed was a play called about the Puerto Rican gang. No. The Puerto Rican gang, the musical that was on Broad. Yeah. West Side Story. The answer should be a musical.
Rabbi Shia Hecht, Ovens.
What is my goal? My goal is not to give everyone a message that we plan on working things out by integrating our two things. By a person understanding more of their own religion, they will automatically respect another person. The respect that my religion teaches me has nothing to do with understanding you. See, if there's a problem, if the only way I'm going to respect you is based on how much I understand you, no matter what it is, in certain circles you're going to run into problems. Number one, we are different, and we think we should and can be different. When the Rebbe said to the mayor that we were all one people, I think what the Rebbe is talking about is that the common denominator that we're all children of God, and that the respect we all have to give each other under that banner. But that does not mean I have to invite you to my house for dinner, because I cannot go back to your house for dinner, because you're not going to give me kosher food. And I said, so like one black said, I'll bring in kosher food. And I said, yeah, we can't use your ovens. We can't use your dishes. It's not just a question of buying certain food. It's buying the food, preparing it a certain way. We can't use your dishes. We can't use your oven. The higher you go, the more common denominator. And what the Rebbe was saying, you as the mayor, don't get caught up in the differences. From your position is, you have to look at it as one city and one human race. We are all New Yorkers, and therefore I will protect all New Yorkers. You see, preferential treatment suggests that you're giving the person the police car not because they need the police car, but because they are who they are. You're not going to give them the housing because they need the housing. You're giving it because of who they are. But just because I'm a Jew, therefore I shouldn't get the police car. The question is, at a synagogue that has 5,000 Jews leave the synagogue at the same time, do they have a police car to stop the traffic? The answer is every single synagogue, temple, mosque is in the world stops traffic when 5,000 people have to walk out at the same time.
The Reverend Al Sharpton, Rain. The DA came back with no indictment. So then our only course was to ask for a special prosecutor, which is appointed by the governor, who's been hostile, and to sue civilly. When we went into civil court, we went to get an order to show cause. The judge signed it and gave me a deadline of 3 days. The driver left the country. No one even said, why would he run if he did no wrong? If you and I were in an accident, we'd have to go to civil court. Why is this man above the law? So they said, he's in Israel. So I said, well, I'll go to Israel to show best efforts. And the deadline was I had to serve him by Tuesday, which was Yom Kippur. That was the judge's decision, not mine. Therefore, I shouldn't get the police car. The question is, so we went. Alton Maddox and I got on a plane, left Monday night, landed Tuesday morning, went and served the American embassy so that if this man had any decency at all, he could come to the American embassy and receive service, which he has not done to this day. Came back, went to court and showed the judge the receipts, and the judge said, you made best efforts, therefore you are now permitted by default to go ahead and sue the rabbi or whomever because you cannot do the driver. So it wasn't just a media grandstand. We wanted to show the world, one, this man ran and was allowed to run, and two, we wanted to be able to legally go around him to sue the people he was working for so that we can bring them into court and establish why and what happened. And it came out in the paper the other day that the driver in the other car didn't have a driver's license. So we're dealing with a complete outrage here. We're dealing with a double standard. We're dealing with a situation where blacks do not have equal protection under the law, and the media is used to castigate us that merely asked for justice rather than castigate those that would hit a kid and walk away like he just stepped on a roach. There also is the media contention of the young Jewish scholar that was stabbed that night, and they've even distorted saying my words at the funeral. I preached the funeral. The newspaper said I helped to spark or inspire or incite people to kill him. Yankel Rosenbaum, when he was dead the day before, I came out there. He was killed the night that the young man was killed with the car accident. I didn't even get a call from the family till 18 hours later. So there's a whole media distortion to protect them, the Lubavitchers. Nobody is talking about, why is this guy in flight? If I was a rabbi, I am a minister, and my driver hit a kid, I would not let the driver leave. I certainly would give my condolences or anything else I could to the family. I don't care what race they are. To this minute, the Rebbe has never even uttered a word of sympathy to the family, and even sent them a card, a flower, or nothing. And he's supposed to be a religious leader. So it's treating us with absolute contempt, and I don't care how controversial this makes us. I will not tolerate being insulted. If you piss in my face, I'm gonna call it piss. I'm not gonna call it rain. Richard Green, Rage.
Sharpton, Carson, and Reverend Herbert Daughtry. Didn't have any power out there, really. The media gave them power. But they weren't turning those youths on and off. Nobody knew who controlled the switch out there. These young people had rage, like an oil well fire that has to be burnt out. Huh. All they were doing was a sort of orchestrating it. They're not really the ones that were saying, well, stop, go, don't go, stop, turn around, go. It wasn't like that. These young people had rage out there. That didn't matter who was in control of that. The rage had to go out. And that rage has been building up. When all those guys have come and gone, the rage is still there. I can show you that rage every day. Right up and down this avenue, we see, sometimes in 1 month, we see 3 bodies in 1 month. That's rage. And that's something that nobody has control of. And I don't know who told you that it was preferential treatment for blacks that the mayor kept the cops back. If the mayors had turned those cops on, we would still be in the midst of a battle. And I pray on both sides of the fence, and I tell the people in the Jewish community the same thing. This is not something force will hold. Those youths were running on cops with nothing in their hands. 7 and 8 and 9 and 10-year-old boys were running at cops with nothing, just running at them with rage. Those young people out there are angry, and that anger has to be vented. It has to be negotiated. And they're not angry at the Lubavitcher community. They're just as angry at you and me, if it comes to that. They have no role models, no guidance. So they're just out there, growing up on their own. Their peers are their role models. Their peers is who teach them how to move. So when they see the Lubavitchers, they don't know the difference between Heil Hitler and whatever else. They don't know the difference. When you ask them to say who Hitler was, they couldn't even be able to begin to tell you. Half of them don't even know. 3/4 of them don't even know. Richard Green, can I help? I told you I want some color. Color up on the wall. Give me some colors. Look, I'm in the middle of something. Half of them don't even know. 3/4 of them. Just as much as they don't know who Frederick Douglass was. They know Malcolm, because Malcolm has been played up to such an extent now that they know Malcolm. But ask who Nat Turner was, or Mary McLeod Bethune, or Booker T, because the system has given them Malcolm. It's convenient. And Spike is gonna give them Malcolm even more. It's convenient.
Rosalind Malamud, The Coup.
Do you know what happened in August here? You see when you read the newspapers. I mean, my son filmed what was going on, but when you read the newspapers, of course, I was here. I couldn't leave my house. I would only go out early during the day. The police were barricading here. You see, I wish I could just go on television. I want to scream at the whole world. They said that the blacks were rioting against the Jews in Crown Heights and that the Jews were fighting back. Do you know that the blacks who came here to riot were not my neighbors? I don't love my neighbors. I don't know my black neighbors. Well, there's one lady on President Street, Claire. I adore her. She's my girlfriend's next door neighbor. I've had a manicure done in her house and we sit and kibitz and stuff, but I don't know them. I told you, we don't mingle socially because of the difference of food and religion and what have you here. But the people in this community want exactly what I want out of life. They want to live in nice homes. They all go to work. They couldn't possibly have houses here if they didn't generally. They have two incomes that come in. They want to send their kids to college. They want to live a nice, quiet life. They want to shop for their groceries and cook their meals and go to their Sunday picnics. They just want to have decent homes and decent lives. The people who came to riot here were brought by this famous Reverend Al Sharpton, which I'd like to know who ordained him. He brought in a bunch of kids who didn't have jobs in the summertime. Oh, I wish you could see the New York Times. Unfortunately, it was on page 20. I mean, they interviewed one of the black girls on Utica Avenue. She said, these guys will make you pregnant at night and in the morning not know who you are. And if you're sitting on a front stoop and it's very, very hot and you have no money and you have nothing to do with your time and someone says, come on, you want to riot? Well, you know how kids are. The fault lies with the police department. The police department did nothing to stop them. I was sitting here in the front of the house when bottles were being thrown and the sergeant tells 500 policemen with clubs and helmets and guns to duck. And I said to him, you're telling them to duck? What should I do? I don't have a club and a gun. Had they stopped it on the first night, this kid who came from Australia, oh, you know, his parents were Holocaust survivors. He didn't have to die. He worked, did a lot of research in Holocaust studies. He didn't have to die. What happened on Utica Avenue was an accident. Jewish people do not drive vans into 7-year-old boys. You want to know something? Black people do not drive vans into 7-year-old boys. Hispanic people do not drive vans into 7-year-old boys. It's just not done. People like Jeffrey Dahmer, maybe they do it. But average citizens do not go out and try to kill 7-year-old boys. It was an accident, but it was allowed to fester and steam and all that. When you come here, do you see anything that's going on? Riots? No. But Al Sharpton and the likes of him like Dougherty, who, by the way, has been in prison and all of a sudden he becomes a Reverend Dougherty. They once did an expose on him. But these guys live off this, you understand? People are not going to give them money and contribute to their causes unless they're out there rabble rousing. My black neighbors, I mean, I spoke to them. They were hiding in their houses just like I was. We were scared. I was scared. I was really frightened. I had 500 policemen standing in front of my house every day. I had mounted police, but I couldn't leave my block because when it got dark, I couldn't come back in. I couldn't meet anyone for dinner. Thank God. I told you my children were all out of town. My son was in Russia. The coup was exactly the same day as the riot, and I was very upset about it. He was in Russia running a summer camp, and I was very concerned when I heard about that. I hadn't heard from him that night the riot started. When I did hear from him, I told him to stay in Russia. He'd be safer than here. And he was.
Reuven Ostrov, Pogroms.
I was working in a hospital. I worked as an assistant chaplain downstate at the King County Hospital. I heard that Yankel Rosenbaum was stabbed, and they were going to give him an autopsy. And they asked if he had an autopsy or not, because in the Jewish religion, a person is not allowed to have an autopsy. And I found out later that he did have one a few days later. I found a Jewish man in a room, a Russian man. His mother committed suicide because she was so terrified. She jumped out of the third floor of her apartment building, committed suicide. The mother originally came from Russia. I was speaking to her son in one of the rooms near the morgue, trying to get his mother not to have an autopsy. And he was telling me that the mother came from Russia 11 years ago, and the mother left Russia 11 years ago because of the hardships that they had had over there. And when they came to America, when this thing started happening in Crown Heights, it became painful. It felt like there was no place to go. It's like you're trapped, and everywhere you go, there's Jew haters. So then he told me she committed suicide. Told me the next morning he woke up and he heard the doorbell ring, and she wasn't there. And he noticed that the window was open, which is never open because she was afraid of the cold, even in the summertime. And he saw his mother with blood all over her, had landed head first on the concrete side of the apartment building. After that, we already knew this was getting serious because we had Sonny Carson come down, and we had Reverend Sharpton come down and start making pogroms.
Carmel Cato, Lingering.
In the meanwhile, it was 2. Angela was on the ground, but she was trying to move. Gavin was still. They was trying to pound him. I was the father. I was it, chucked and pushed, and a lot of sarcastic words were passed towards me from the police while I was trying to explain. It was my kid. These are my children. The child was hit, I saw everything. Everything. The guy radiator burst. All the hoses, the steam, all the garbage buckets going along the building, and it was very loud. Everything burst. It was like an atomic bomb. That's why all these people coming around want to know what's happening. Oh, it was very outrageous. Numerous numbers. All the time the police saying you can't get in, you can't pass, and the children laying on the ground. He was hit at exactly 8:30. Why? I was standing over there. There was a little child, a friend of mine, come up with a little child, and I lift the child up, and she looked at her watch at the same time, and she said, "It was 8:30." And I give the child back to her, and then it happened. My child. There are things I never dream about. I take care of my children. You know, it's a funny thing. If a child gets sick and he dies, it won't hurt me so bad. Or if a child run out into the street and get hit down, it wouldn't hurt me. That's what's hurting me. The whole week before Gavin died, my body was changing. I was having different feelings. I stopped eating. I didn't eat nothing. I only drank water for 2 weeks. I was very touchy. Any least thing that drop or any song I heard would affect me. Every time I tried to do something, I would have to stop. I was lingering all the time. But I can do things, I can see things, I know that for a fact. I was telling myself something is wrong somewhere. But I didn't want to see, I didn't want to accept. And it was inside of me. And even when I go home, I tell my friends, something coming, I can feel it, but I didn't want to see. All the time I just deny, and I never thought it was Gavin. I didn't have a clue. I thought it was one of the other children, the bigger boys or the girl, because she worried me. She wanted. But Gavin, he was healthy. He didn't cause no trouble. That's what's devastating me now. Sometimes it make me feel like there's no justice, like the Jewish people. They are very high up. It's a very big thing. They're running the whole show from the judge right down, and it's something I don't understand. The Jewish people, they told me there are certain people I cannot be seen with, and certain things I cannot say, and certain people I cannot talk to, and they made that very clear to me, the Jewish people, that they can throw the case out. And must I go to them with pity? I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what kind of crap is that. And make me say things I don't want to say, and make me do things I don't want to do. I am a special person. I was born different. I'm a man born by my foot. I was born by my foot. Anytime a baby coming by the foot, they either cut the mother or the baby dies. But I was born by my foot. I'm one of special. There's no way they can overpower me. No, there's nothing to hide. You can repeat every word I say.
Thank you all for watching Anna DeVere Smith's Fires in the Mirror. A few closing remarks before we call it a day. Congratulations to the entire cast on bodying those monologues and depicting them in such an honest, truthful, and beautiful way. And I want everyone here watching to remember that there is more that unites us than divides us. And reminder that during this month of Black History Month, to please go and check out some of these historical figures, known and not known, in the Black community, and really get to know them better. And during this month of love, a reminder, now and always, to cherish those nearest and dearest to you, as well as to cherish yourself. If you would like to watch more of our work for Joyeux Théâtre and to support, please feel free to subscribe to my channel on YouTube. It's free. And the name of the channel is C'est Jackie. CESTJACKIE. I'll say it one more time. CESTJACKIE. And if you would like to collaborate on any sort of projects, whether they be theatrical, poetry, spoken word, anything to do with the arts, please feel free to contact me at the same title, C'est Jackie, or Cest Jackie, at gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you at our next events. Have a lovely day.